Good morning. Today we're going to be continuing on with our inferencing unit. And it's going to get a little more challenging today because we're no longer going to be reading really short passages. Now you're going to go on to reading an actual short story, something that's 5 or 6 paragraphs long. And you're going to have to pull information not from one paragraph, but from multiple paragraphs. So I want to just go over what the steps are that you need to take when making an inference. So these are the steps really with short or long passages, but I really want you to make sure that you're using them when you're doing your long passage. So, well, the first step's kind of the easiest one because, well, step 1 is to read the passage. You can't make an inference if you don't read the passage. Step 2 is kind of a no-brainer one too. You have to read the question. You don't know what you're supposed to make an inference on. You don't know what you're supposed to answer if you don't read the question. Step 3 is we are going to list relevant details. Relevant is the key word. Do you know what relevant means? Relevant means they relate to it. So if someone is asking you a question to make an inference on how a character feels, you could list things like their facial expression, their voice tone, their body language. You wouldn't list something about the weather, or unless how they felt was related to the weather, but you wouldn't list something about where they are, or because that doesn't have to do anything to do with how they feel. You know how they feel based on how they look, what they say, their body language. So make sure that you're using relevant details. So for example, if I were to walk in here mad and I was slamming the door and I cannot believe you guys acted that way at lunch today, and I asked you to tell me how I felt, you would use clues like you were clenching your fist, you hit the board, you were yelling, your voice was raised, you were pointing your finger at people, but you wouldn't say you were wearing a really cute sweater. That's not a relevant detail. That has nothing to do with how I feel. So a relevant detail actually has to do with your question. It's not some random thing. It's not about my beautiful, comfy sweater that I'm wearing if you're trying to explain how I feel. So step 3 is list your relevant details. Step 4 is to put your details together. So you're going to find all kinds of details, but then you've got to figure out, well, how do these details relate to each other? How do they tie together for me to make my inference? And then step 5 is to determine what your details mean. Basically, what is your inference? So we're going to read a passage today. And then, if you notice, I've got this outline. Hopefully you can tell this is like the outline of a person. A little bit. I never claimed to be an artist. So this is the outline of a person. We're going to use this graphic organizer to help us figure out what the passage is saying. And then you're going to be doing the same thing for your assignment today. So let me put this passage up for you. I figured it would be easier if I put it on the screen so you can follow along. So let's first read this passage. So it says, Jerry tapped his foot impatiently. He could hardly wait for the dismissal bell. Remember, class, your research paper is due tomorrow, Mrs. Howard said. Mrs. Howard gave some reminders about how to format the paper, but Jerry wasn't paying attention. All he could think about was getting home. He'd need to run fast to get there before his parents. Most days, Jerry took his time getting home from school. He liked to stop at the video game store to check out the new games. However, today was different. As soon as the final bell sounded, Jerry put on his thick, fur-lined coat. He threw his sneakers into his backpack and quickly laced up his snow boots. Nothing could keep Jerry from his mission. The deep snow on the ground did little to slow him down. He reached his driveway in record time. Jerry darted to the mailbox and grabbed the bills and other junk mail. Then he saw it, a stiff white envelope. It was addressed to his parents from his school. He stuffed the envelope in his jacket and put the rest of the mail neatly back into the mailbox. Inside the house, Jerry opened the envelope and pulled out a piece of folded green paper. He looked worried as he studied it. Then he quickly balled up the piece of paper and put it inside of an empty cereal box sitting in the garbage. Moving aside some trash, Jerry shoved the cereal box to the bottom of the can. Mission accomplished, he thought. Relieved, Jerry tossed aside his backpack and flipped on his gaming system. He was already a level 65 dungeon warrior, and he wanted to get to level 70 by the end of the night. Jerry sat in front of his TV screen for several hours. He only took short breaks to reload on the energy drinks. Finally, after midnight, Jerry did it. He reached level 70. He wanted to be excited, but he was dizzy and had a headache. He didn't even have enough energy to change into his pajamas and crawl into bed. Instead, Jerry kicked his feet up on his unopened backpack and fell asleep in his video game chair. All right, so now what we're gonna do, so we did step one. We read, let me change this a little bit so you can see it. We did step one, we read the passage. Now we have to read the question. The question is, what season is it and how do you know? So what season is it and how do you know? So there's my question, that's step two. Now I need step three, list my relevant details. So if I'm looking for what season is it, I'm gonna be looking for what's the weather like, what's the setting, what are props, meaning what is the character wearing, what are actions that they're doing that might give me clues to that. So let's go through our passage and look. So Jerry tapped his foot impatiently. He could hardly wait for the dismissal bell. Remember, class, your research paper is due tomorrow, Mrs. Howard said. Mrs. Howard gave some reminders about how to format the paper, but Jerry wasn't paying attention. All he could think about was getting home. He needed to run fast to get there before his parents. Most days, Jerry took his time getting home from school. He liked to stop at the video game store to check out the new games. However, today was different. As soon as the final bell sounded, Jerry put on his thick, fur-lined coat. He threw his sneakers into his backpack and quickly laced up his snow boots. So some literal clues or some, I'm going to use the purple here, things that I know. So what I know, I'm going to put on the outside. So I know that he's wearing snow boots. You see that? I know, let me move that just a little bit. I know that he's wearing snow boots. I know that, what else did it say? So he threw his sneakers into his backpack, quickly laced up his snow boots. Jerry put on his thick, fur-lined coat. So thick, fur-lined coat. Then I'm going to keep going. Nothing would keep Jerry from his mission. The deep snow on the ground did little to slow him down. He reached the driveway in record time. Jerry darted to the mailbox and grabbed the bills and other junk mail. So over here, something else I know is there was snow on the ground. So those are my literal clues, also known as my relevant details. So literal clues and relevant details are the same thing. So then I'm going to go into, I need to put my details together. So let's see if any of my details have something in common. So I'm going to use blue for that. Maybe my blue works. Yes. All right. So I'm going to put my thinking like what they have in common on the inside here. So snow boots, thick fur-lined coat, snow on ground. Do any of those have anything in common? Well, I know that snow boots and thick fur-lined boots are things you wear when it's cold. Things you wear when it's cold. The snow on the ground, I know that it only snows when it's cold. And it's cold, well, yeah, when it's cold. Okay, so I only have 3 clues, and that's totally okay. That's enough. So then I'm going to come and see what's my step 5. Determine what your details mean. All right, so my question was, what season is it and how do I know? Well, I have, they wear snow boots and thick fur-lined coat when it's cold. It only snows when it's cold. What season is it when it's usually cold? I'm going to put my inference down here. I'm going to make my neck a little wider on the person. I know he's beautiful. I think that it is winter. So I believe that it is winter. So now what I need to do is I need to write my sentence. I need to restate this. I'm going to use race to answer my question. So let me get rid of this. All right, and then we're going to use this paper to write our response. And that's what you're going to do today as well. So let's use the green because that's the first one I pulled out. All right, so what season is it? So my first step to my short answer is restate. That's the R. So what season is it? So remember, if you're making an inference, your sentence should start with I believe, I think. So I'm going to say, I think the season is winter. Okay, so I've restated and I have answered. I told you that I think it's winter, and the question was, what season do I think it was? So I've restated, I've answered. Now I need to cite. I need to use evidence from the text, and I gotta use comma quote. So I'm gonna say, in the passage, it says, and I'm not gonna pull that passage up because I have my information here. It says, comma, quote, Jerry, I think his name was Jerry. Jerry put on his thick fur coat, fur-lined coat, and his snow boots. All right, so there's my cite. Now I'm going to use one of these because this is a short answer. If it were an extended response, I would use both of these because you have to cite 2 pieces of evidence if it's an extended response. But this is just a short answer, so I'm going to use one of those. So I think the season is winter. There's my restated answer. In the passage, it says Jerry put on his thick fur-lined coat and his now boots, his snow boots. There's my cite. Now here's the hardest part for people. This is the explain. You have to explain why this cite proves your answer. So why does wearing thick fur-lined coat and snow boots prove that it's winter? So I would say, I know that you only wear these types of clothes when it is cold, comma, so it has to be winter. All right, so my response was, that was my explain. So let's look. Did I answer the question, what season is it, and how do we know? So let me get a couple markers out here. Let's do red, purple, brown, and orange, because that's what I got. All right, so what season is it? How do I know? I think the season is winter. So there's my restate and my answer. In the passage, it says Jerry put on his thick fur-lined coat and his snow boots. So there is my cite. I pulled that directly from the text to tell you what I thought. So this is directly from the text, comma, quote. I didn't say in the 7th line, I didn't say in paragraph 2. I told you exactly what it said, and I put quotations around that so that you know that I pulled it from the text. Then I have to explain, and this is the part that so many people mess up on. You don't just restate your thing. You don't say, so I think the season is winter. No, you have to look at your site and say, how does this fact prove that it's winter? Okay, so what, he's wearing thick fur-lined coat. So what, he's got snow boots on. How do I know it's winter? So I have to explain how this proves that it's winter. So I said for my explain, I know that you only wear these types of clothes when it is cold. So it has to be winter. So I proved, hey, these things that I said, you only wear in winter. You don't wear them in summer. You don't wear them in spring. You only wear them in the winter time when it's cold outside. So I know that you only wear these types of clothes when it is cold. So it has to be winter is my explain. I explained my site. So that's what you're doing today. You're going to get a passage, and you are going to, I'm going to give you this graphic organizer. You're going to have to type in the literal clues in the purple boxes on the outside. And then on the blue clues, you're going to match up your purple, or on the blue boxes, you're going to match up your purple and tell me what all of your literal clues have in common. Okay? And then you'll write your response. You'll write your short answer to that. So we're going to be practicing that for the rest of this week and into next week, because this is a big skill. And if you can do this skill, then you can do any reading skill. Inferencing is tied into every single reading standard. So we're going to become experts in it. All right. See you guys in small group. Bye.